Welcome back, Wonders. It's Naidra. Today, I'm going to show you guys my latest creation and a build I've been having a lot of fun with. This is the Gorilla Payback build. It's been a lot of fun to play with, and it's also really fast. The benefit to this build is it's a very low risk build to try. And what I mean by that is this does use very similar, if not the same gear that I was using when I was playing with my Quill Volley build. So it's something that you definitely can try out. All you're really having to do is change your skill tree and your Paragon board. If you like it, really happy to contribute. If you don't, it's really easy to change back. Like I mentioned, you don't have to change really any of your gear in order to try this out. So with that being said, as usual, I'm going to take you guys through a pit level 100 to show you how it works. I have taken this into a pit 130 and it has been able to get through it pretty quickly and pretty easily. So it's definitely something that you can push further into the pit with. I have not tried anything further than that, so I'm not too sure how it's going to work beyond that point. But again, it is something that's really fun to play, and it's also not Quill Volley. So once we go through the pit and I show you guys how this works, we'll come back to town and we can go through our equipment, our skill tree, and all of that other good stuff as well. Before we dive into it, just a reminder, if you guys have not yet subscribed, please do so below. This is greatly going to help me out and also help grow the channel so that I can make additional videos like this going forward. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right in and see how this works. All right, so similar to our Quill Volley build, we are using the same defensives. We are going to be using Vortex to pull enemies in. We're going to be using Armored Hide. We're also going to be using Ravager and Scourge as well. Hunter as always. And then lastly, we're going to be using Payback for our primary skill. So with that said, the idea here is to pull our enemies in. As usual, we are using the shatter effect. So if we have more enemies pulled in together, we can get through them a little bit quicker. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how this works. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. We're going to vortex our enemies in, activate our defensives. We are using Mystic Circle with this build. If you don't like Mystic Circle, you are welcome to try something else. That is totally fine, but it does give us enhanced damage. And like I mentioned, the idea behind this build was to try to make it a very low risk deal. So that way, like I said, if you guys don't like it or if you're not interested in it, you could always change it back without having to risk too much or without having to exhaust all of your resources. So let's go ahead and pull these guys in here, activate our defensives, and boom, pretty quickly able to take these guys down. And we'll try one more group here before we go back to town and see what's making this work. There we go. So if you do it in the right succession, it is going to pretty much eliminate everything in one shot. One more group here. Boom. And as far as our damage, we are putting out billions, and I am also seeing trillions of damage going out as well. So it is something that is very high damage and is taking advantage of, like I said, that shatter effect. All right, so taking a look at our equipment first, we are using the Rod of Kapaliki. I have finally been able to masterwork 1 point into chance for core skills to hit twice, but the idea is to try to get all 3 into that. I do have some opportunity here. And then for our runes for this guy, I am using Pak and Gar. The amount of damage we're doing is coming from our critical strike damage as well. So we want to try to have as much critical strike chance as possible without changing any of our other equipment. So this is going to help. If you're doing lower level content, you can swap this out for the job rune. That way you're able to get through stuff a little bit quicker and you can teleport through your hell tides or through your hordes. Looking at our boots, we are using the duelist aspect. We are going to be taking the dexterity, maximum life, and armor stats. We are going to temper barrier generation and movement speed to this, where we want to primarily put our masterworking points into maximum life. Looking at our pants, we are going to be taking the interdiction aspect as usual. As far as our stats, we're using maximum life, armor, and plus to our basic skills. This is considered a basic skill as well, thanks to the Rod of Kapaliki, so we will be taking advantage of this. And then looking at our tempers, we're going to want to temper on barrier generation and maximum resolve stacks, where our masterworking is all going to go into maximum resolve stacks. Next, we've got our gloves. We're using the Fell Soothsayer aspect here, where we are going to take the dexterity, attack speed, and chance to restore primary resource for our stats. We're not using the Ring of Midnight Sun here, so if we don't have the chance to restore primary resource, this build will not work. So it is very important that we have that on here. And then we are going to be tempering on Mystic Circle and Vortex Size in order to try to keep our enemies as close together as possible and also put out as much damage as we can. When we masterwork this, we want to put all of our masterworking points into attack speed if possible. If not, Mystic Circle potency also does work, but we really don't need any of the other ones, so try to focus on those two if possible. Looking at our chest, we've got the Shroud of False Death. This is very usual for most builds now, and also we want to masterwork all three into maximum life. For our helmet, we've got the apprehension aspect. We're going to be taking dexterity, max life, and resistance to all elements with this one. If you're low on armor, you can swap out the resistance to all elements for armor. It's up to you. That one is not necessary. Because we are going through these groups pretty quickly, the resistances really aren't going to matter as much, but I decided to throw this on there since I was able to get a perfect one of those, but that one is optional. Looking at our tempers, we're going to be tempering on barrier generation and maximum resolve stacks, where ideally we want all of our masterworking to go into maximum resolve stacks. For our runes for this one, we are using Tam and K. We do need that Earthen Bulwark for that additional barrier and also for that additional tinkiness, so it is important to have this. But if you're not using this in higher level pits, you can swap this one out for the Vortex rune, which is going to allow you to continually pull enemies in. Aside from having it just on your skill bar, this will make it a little bit easier to group them up and to pull them up and to get through your content a little bit quicker. So it just depends on what you're using this for. But if you're using this in pits higher level than 100, you are going to want to make sure you put Earthen Bulwark on here. Looking at our amulet, we are using Banished Lord's Talisman. I would recommend masterworking attack speed or maximum life. That one is up to you. It depends on what your attack speed is at. Ideally, we want to be between 100 to 120 or so attack speed. If you're higher than that, then I would masterwork maximum life. If not, this is a great place to get a little bit of additional attack speed. And then looking at our rings, we are using the redirected force aspect for our first ring. We're going to be taking dexterity, maximum life, and attack speed on this guy, where we're going to temper on resource cost reduction and Mystic Circle potency. Ideally, we want to try to get all three masterworks into maximum life for this one. And then lastly, for our last piece of equipment, we've got the Plains Power aspect, where this is what's going to allow us to create that Mystic Circle. We are going to be taking dexterity, maximum life, and attack speed on this one as well, where we're going to be tempering on our resource generation and throwing on some Mystic Circle potency on here as well. For masterworking, we want to try to put all three into maximum life for this guy. And then for our gems, we are going to be putting on diamonds on our amulet and our rings. We are going to be taking amethyst for our chest armor and pants. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at our skills here. So for our skill tree, we want to take 1 point into Rock Splitter and 1 point into Enhanced Rock Splitter. We're not actually using a basic skill. So as usual, you can put whatever points you want into this. We just need to put 2 in here so that we can move on to the next part of the skill tree. Taking a look at our core skills, we are not going to be taking any core skills, but we will be taking 1 point into Vigorous and then 3 points into Balanced Exertion. And then we also will be taking 3 points into Follow Through. Since our Payback skill is considered a basic skill, we will be benefiting from taking advantage of this guy here. Moving on down, we've got the focus skills. We're going to be taking Vortex and then taking it up to Enhanced Vortex and Measured Vortex. We are going to be using Vortex frequently. This is what's going to allow us to group our enemies together quicker. So it is important that we're taking this one. And then as usual, we are going to be taking 1 point into Mirage and 3 points into Unrestrained Power. Moving on down, we've got 1 point into Ravager, 1 point into Enhanced Ravager, and 1 point into Measured Ravager. And then on the left-hand side, we've got 1 point into Focal Point and 3 points into Apex. Moving on down to our defensives, this is going to look pretty normal for you guys. We are going to be taking 1 point into Endurance and moving our way up to Perseverance. On the left-hand side, we've got Armored Hide for 3 points, taking that up to Enhanced Armored Hide, and then finishing that up with Reinforced Armored Hide. And then we also will be taking Scourge down to Enhanced Scourge, and then finishing that up with Reinforced Scourge. And then looking at our potency skills, we've got 3 points into Resilient and 3 points into Dominant. Because this is a Payback build, we will be taking 5 points into Payback, taking that up to Enhanced Payback, and then finishing it up with poised payback. And then we are going to be taking 3 points into potent and only 1 point into furnace. And taking a look at the left-hand side of the potency skills, we will be taking 3 points into vehemence. Moving on down to our ultimate skills, as usual, we're taking 3 points into resolution, 3 points into spiritual attunement, and then finishing that up with 3 points into supremacy. Lastly, for our ultimate skills, we will be taking 4 points into hunter, taking that down to harmonious hunter, and then finishing it up with exalted hunter. And then lastly, for the skill tree, we've got our key passives where we will be taking prodigy's tempo. And then taking a look at our Paragon board, we're going to be starting with the first board, which is going to be Spirit as usual. One thing to keep in mind here is first we want to get through all 5 boards before we add these additional dex nodes that we've added here on the side. So don't add these right off the bat. We'll circle back to these once you've filled out the rest of the board or once you reach the Paragon level 280. With that said, we'll make our way up to the second board, which is going to be Viscous Shield, and we will be pairing this one up with the Outmatch glyph. We'll make our way over to the left, where we're going to be taking the Sapping board, and we're going to pair that up with the Hubris glyph. And then moving on over to our fourth board, we're going to be taking the Infighter node and pairing that one up with the Exploit glyph, as we are taking advantage of our vulnerable damage here. And then for our fifth board, we're going to make our way up to the top left, where we'll be taking the Revealing board, and we'll pair that up with the Colossal glyph. And then with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our Spirit Hall. So as usual, we are going to be taking Jaguar for our primary spirit, and we also will be taking Jaguar for our secondary spirit as well. And then lastly, we've got our Mercenaries, where for our hired mercenary, we are taking Rahir. We're going to take Shield Charge down to Rahir's Guard, and then we will take Provoke so that we can make our way down to Mocking Lure for that increased 15% damage. And then for our reinforcement, we are taking Varyana. This is going to be using the Bloodthirst skill, and that's going to trigger whenever the player casts any skill in combat. So with that said, that is all I have for you guys for today. Once again, this build is a lot of fun to use, and it does get through some high level content as well. The purpose of this build is so that you can try something different that's not Quill Volley, but once again be able to complete some higher level content. And also, like I mentioned before, it is a completely risk-free build to try. If you don't like it, you're not having to change any of your gear. You just change your skill tree and your Paragon board, which makes things a lot easier, and it's not going through all of your materials and your gold as well. So I hope you guys like this build. If you do, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. If you guys have any other builds you'd like me to try, make sure you comment that below as well. With that being said, thank you guys for joining me, and until next time, Wanderers.